everyone, and welcome back. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for the 10th explainer in our research methodology series titled The Objectives of Science and Social Science Research. Seriously, if you've ever found yourself wondering how on earth we can rigorously study something as unpredictable, emotional, and downright complex as human society, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're going to unpack the foundations of how social scientists actually make sense of our messy world. I mean, think about it for a second. The natural sciences, they kind of have it easy, right? They're out there looking for universal laws of nature. Gravity doesn't just change its mind, it doesn't have a cultural perspective, and it certainly doesn't get offended when you try to measure it. But the social sciences, we study human beings. And let's be honest, humans are incredibly messy. We have culture, we make independent, sometimes irrational choices, and crucially, we are reflexive, meaning we actually react to the very fact that we're being studied. This mind-boggling complexity means we absolutely cannot just copy and paste the tools of physics or chemistry and expect to understand the society. We need a completely different, highly specialized methodological toolkit.
Okay, let's dive into this. Today, we're looking at 1. The social science challenge. 2. Description and deep explanation. 3. Predicting with models. 4. Ethics and human reflexivity. 5. Reliability and cumulative progress. And 6. The craft of sense-making. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the social science challenge. Now, when we say social science, we are talking about a massive umbrella. Sociology, political science, economics, anthropology, the whole shebang. And while the natural sciences are chasing those universal, unchanging laws, like gravity dropping an apple from a tree every single time, the social sciences have to grapple with 3 massive, unavoidable variables. First, reflexivity, which is that whole idea that people change their behavior when they know they're being watched. Second, cultural diversity. A behavior in one country might mean something completely, radically different in another. And third, normativity, meaning human values are just always in the mix. But, and this is the absolute key takeaway here, despite all these hurdles, social sciences still share the exact same overarching objectives as all science. We still want to describe, explain, and predict. We just have to be a whole lot more clever about how we go about doing it. That brings us right to Section 2, description and deep explanation. Before we can even dream of changing the world or predicting what happens next, we have to faithfully describe and explain what is actually happening right in front of us. And this brilliantly illustrates a concept introduced by the anthropologist Clifford Geertz, known as thick description. Imagine you're looking at someone and their eye closes and opens quickly. If you use thin description, maybe just from a basic observational checklist, you record a physical eye movement, a twitch. But if you use thick description, you look at the context, the relationships, the webs of meaning. You suddenly recognize that this eye movement was actually a wink. It's a symbolic, social gesture. Maybe it's an inside joke or a secret signal. Context literally changes everything. Similarly, researchers Robert Adcock and David Collier remind us that we need absolutely crystal clear measurement validity. Whether you're using qualitative interviews or hard quantitative data, if you're trying to study a massive concept like democracy or trust, you need incredibly precise definitions so you know for sure that you are actually measuring a wink and not just a random blink. So, once we've accurately described what's happening, we have to explain it. And in social science, explanation has this sort of dual focus. Yes, we absolutely need to know the external causes, but we also need this crucial concept right here, Verstehen. Pioneered by Max Weber, Verstehen is a German term that basically means the interpretive grasp of an actor's subjective meaning. Think about it. Why did they think they were doing it? If someone votes for a specific policy or joins a protest, social science requires us to deeply understand the inner logic and the personal meanings behind their action, not just the broad economic forces pushing on them from the outside. We literally have to get inside their worldview. But listen, we cannot just stop at subjective meaning. We need rigorous science. As the philosopher Karl Popper reminds us in this really powerful quote, our explanations must be falsifiable. That means they have to be open to being proven wrong by empirical evidence. You can't just have a theory that explains everything and can never be tested. To achieve this kind of rigor, researchers like Angrist and Pischke champion what they call design-based strategies, things like randomized trials to explicitly pinpoint cause and effect. At the exact same time, scholars like Alexander George and Andrew Bennett advocate for process tracing in case studies. Process tracing is honestly a lot like being a detective. You're looking for the hidden footprints, interviewing the metaphorical witnesses to show the exact step-by-step mechanism of how a cause led to an effect. It's this really beautiful combination of understanding deep human meaning while demanding strict causal rigor.
All right, let's transition to Section 3, Predicting with Models.
So, once we've described and explained a phenomenon, the natural next question for any scientist is, can we predict what's going to happen next? And can we evaluate policies to actually improve things? Well, predicting human behavior is notoriously tricky. John Kleinberg points out what he calls prediction policy problems. Get a load of this fascinating example. Let's say economists release a high-profile forecast predicting an upcoming economic recession. Consumers hear this, they panic, they stop spending their money, and they actually cause the recession to happen. The prediction itself altered the outcome. Mind-blowing, right? But we still have to try to evaluate what policies actually work. Researchers like Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo use randomized field experiments in development economics. They do this to generate highly credible, entirely neutral evidence about which poverty alleviation strategies genuinely work in the real world. However, and this is a big however, as Nancy Cartwright and Jeremy Hardy caution, we have to constantly strive for portable knowledge. Look, just because a poverty initiative worked flawlessly in one specific rural community doesn't mean you can just copy-paste it globally. We have to deeply understand the underlying institutional differences before we can ever confidently predict it will work somewhere else.
Let's see how this all builds into predictive models. Like, how do individual, everyday choices become massive societal shifts? Scholar John Elster says we start by assembling the nuts and bolts. These are these simple, micro-level mechanisms like individual preferences or basic social norms. Then, sociologist Mark Granovetter adds the brilliant concept of threshold effects. This is the idea that small, micro-level changes, maybe literally just one or two key people changing their minds, can hit a tipping point. And when they do, it triggers a massive cascade that results in large-scale collective behavior, like a sudden, sweeping social movement. We build these models to take incredible social complexity and render it intelligible. And anchoring all of this wild, cascading behavior are our institutions. As the economist Douglas North highlights in this quote, institutions are exactly what shape our incentives. They act as these crucial stabilizing forces that actually allow us to form expectations about political and economic life. Honestly, without institutions, predicting any sort of complex social structure would be practically impossible. It'd be complete chaos.
Moving into Section 4, Ethics and Human Reflexivity.
Because we are studying living, breathing human beings, we really have to talk about normativity and ethics. Social science involves values, and it has real, tangible consequences for people's lives. I want you to consider this completely mind-bending concept from philosopher Ian Hacking, Interactive Kinds. Hacking argues that the categories we create in social research aren't just passive, harmless labels. Once they are publicized, they actively change the world. Think about diagnostic categories in psychiatry, for example. When a new label or diagnosis is introduced to the public, it can fundamentally alter a patient's self-understanding and their future behavior. The very act of categorizing human behavior interacts with and changes that behavior. We aren't just sitting behind a glass observing the world. Our research actively shapes it. It's a profoundly powerful and frankly heavy realization.
Because of this immense power, scholar Bent Fleisberg argues for what he calls a frenetic approach. This is a method rooted deeply in practical wisdom. It basically means that reflexivity, thinking about our own impact, has to be a built-in objective of our research. Social inquiry shouldn't just be about coldly explaining the world from an ivory tower. It absolutely must integrate a deep, ongoing reflection on human values, power dynamics, and ethics. Social science is ultimately a guide for deliberation about what kind of society we actually want to create.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, Reliability and Cumulative Progress.
Think about it. If our research has the power to literally shape society, how do we ensure the knowledge we're generating is actually trustworthy? You've probably heard of the replication crisis over the last decade, right? This was when scientists found out that many classic, famous studies just couldn't be reproduced. It was a massive wake-up call. To build cumulative, reliable progress, researcher Brian Nosek and his colleagues have championed some major, game-changing reforms. This involves incredibly rigorous practices like pre-registering your studies before you ever conduct them, mandating transparent data sharing so anyone can check your math, and using registered reports so that the methodology is evaluated and approved before the results are even known. Furthermore, methodologist John Gehring advocates for methodological pluralism, basically using many different research methods, as long as they are all disciplined by absolute conceptual clarity and transparency. We literally have to show our work. So the crucial point really comes down to this: whether you are out there using qualitative methods to find deep, rich, contextual meaning, or you're crunching numbers with quantitative methods to find broad statistical generalizability, you are on the exact same team. Gary King, Robert Keohane, and Sidney Verba famously argued this point. Despite their surface-level differences, both qualitative and quantitative research share the exact same fundamental logic of scientific inference. We are all engaged in careful, rigorous reasoning from evidence to make reliable, generalizable claims about the world we live in.
We have covered a lot of ground today. Let's bring all these tools together in our final section, Section 6, the craft of sense-making.
We now have a fully equipped methodological tool belt. The overarching objectives of social science are ambitious, sure, but they are incredibly coherent when you look at them all together. We always start with faithful, thick description. We then move to explanations that combine strict causal rigor with deep interpretive sensitivity. We carefully evaluate policies, and we discover the hidden mechanisms driving collective behavior. And we do all of this, every single step, with deep ethical reflexivity, ensuring our methods are fully transparent to build reliable, cumulative progress over time. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. The social sciences are not crystal balls. We aren't magic oracles perfectly predicting the future of a messy, reflexive human race. Instead, social science is a vital, ongoing craft of problem-solving and sense-making. It exists to clarify the complex trade-offs we face every day, to illuminate the hidden structures of human meaning, and to support informed, thoughtful, democratic deliberation. By embracing all of these objectives, we ensure that the knowledge we produce is not just scientifically credible, but also deeply socially responsible. Thank you so much for joining me for this 10th explainer on research methodology. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you found this breakdown helpful and want to keep exploring these fascinating methodologies with me, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment below with your biggest takeaway, share this with a fellow learner, and absolutely make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. See you next time.